Good morning, good afternoon. I will just wait a few moments to see if anybody's gonna hop on live here. And if you're hopping on, even if you're watching the replay, if you could let me know your current relationship to spirit conversations. Have you seen spirits? Have you talked to them? Do you want to? Are you curious? Are you terrified? Just letting me know in the comments as you hop on the live video and the replay. My name is Phoenix Rose. I'm a medium, a spirit communicator, shamanic business coach, and I really enjoy working with spiritual types, healers. Today's conversation teaching is going to be on spirit communication, how to communicate with spirits, how to recognize them when they're around, what to do when they're around. And I'll start by sharing a couple of stories from my own life. I found out I was a medium over a decade ago. I was in the Healing Touch program, which is an energy school. It's actually the only certifiable energy medicine school in the world. And things kept happening. In Healing Touch, it's common that we invite spirits into the space. There's often spiritual surgeries that will occur where the spirit helpers will come to participate in a healing with someone. So that was normal and natural. And some part of opening, balancing my energy really woke up my abilities to see and communicate with spirits. And for a long time, I thought I was crazy. The soundtrack was repeating in my head, I'm crazy, I'm crazy. I kept seeing things and hearing things, and I thought I was crazy. And if I really look back, when I was a child, I would sleep in my closet. I didn't like the faces that were looking at me through my bedroom window, so I would hide in the closet, thinking that they were outside my bedroom window when realistically I was seeing spirits all around me from a young age. Greetings. If you're hopping on, I see some people hopping on, and you would share your connection to spirit communication. Do you know how to do it? Have you done it? Is it your first time? Just putting those things in the comments for us, for me. And and yeah, I was around 22 when my mediumship really started to click in. As soon as I opened the gates, spirits were everywhere. They were in my house, they were following me around, trying to have conversations. For a while, I denied the experience because I was crazy, right? Wasn't real. And then something happened, a few things happened that made it irrefutable. I'm sitting in my house on Christmas Eve many years ago, getting ready to drive. I lived in the mountains at the time, getting ready to drive down the mountain. And a spirit had been following me around for about a month at this point in time. His name was George Carlton. And I knew that his name was George Carlton because he would tell me, and he was always around. And George Carlton was there and had been there for a while. So it's Christmas Eve. I sit down and I finally say to God, okay, I'm ready to accept this gift. I'm not going to run away from it anymore. It's obviously happening. And that day, I helped George Carlton transition to the other side. George Carlton, all he wanted to know was, why has nobody read my book? Why has nobody read my book? He would just repeat this over and over and over again. Why has nobody read my book? And he was wandering around, following me everywhere with this question. So this day, or it had been about a week prior, I said, George Carlton, what is the name of your book? And he tells me, and I look it up to see if it exists. And sure enough, it exists. I find one reference to it being a religious text written in the 1800s. And finally, I say to George Carlton on Christmas Eve many years ago, George Carlton, nobody's read your book because it's boring. And he said, oh, Okay, that makes sense. And he allowed me to transition him to the other side. That day, I also had another spirit show up for some transition work. And he was a curly red hair from Ireland. And his story was that his mother was super abusive. And one day he walked off the edge of the cliff outside of his home and just kept walking. So he had committed suicide and he had been walking in this world for countless years until I saw him, heard him, and was able to help him transition. And this was the beginning of me fully accepting my abilities. Of course, for a while still, I thought it was crazy because I would see all sorts of things. I would see Narnia as creatures in my house. I would see bad men. I would see all sorts of beings. And it was very confusing because I was the only one having the experience of seeing them. So today I'm going to talk about how to basically communicate with the spirit, basically being at the basic level, at the beginner level. I'm going to share some tools, a little technique that you can try on in your own time. I'm going to share how to recognize when spirits are around, what to do about it, the different types of spirits, because there are many. Not all spirits are good, not all spirits are helpful, which is why we have this fear around them. And also, it's just an unknown concept. Not everybody's seeing and sensing them. In order to see and sense spirits, you must be operating at a certain mystical plane. And not all of us are meant for that. Not all of us have clear enough vessels to access that mystical plane. I've been training for lifetimes in some of these arts that I teach here in Rainbow Warrior. And I believe as a druid, as a person of the old way, that our lessons we learn through many lifetimes. And there's even a Japanese form of classical music that they say you cannot learn in one lifetime. So many of us have been traversing these planes for many lifetimes, and maybe you haven't. Maybe it wasn't your skill to learn. Maybe you weren't a druid practicing pagan. Maybe you're a newer soul. Communicating with spirit can be really helpful just to help you have conversations with ancestors, to communicate with beings that might show up. A lot of spirits need healing. The reason why they're still in this plane is they haven't transitioned fully to the spirit realm. They're trapped for some reason. Maybe it was a really painful, traumatic death. Maybe they did something really painful and traumatic. Maybe they committed suicide. A lot of suicide beings get trapped in this place between that's not quite in the human world, not quite in the spirit world. The Christians refer to it as purgatory. It's a real thing. It is this place between. My brother committed suicide and when I was little, and he was the first spirit that started trying to talk to me. I would hear him. I started around 8th grade using a Ouija board to try and connect to him, and connected to all sorts of weird things at the time. And in high school, I could hear him calling my name in the hallways, but I never knew how to respond back. I could hear it. I knew it was him. I just knew, but I didn't know how to respond back. And over time, I learned. And when I was 26, I was in this psychic energy school, an energy psychotherapy school, and we were learning a technique to help dead people transition, stuck spirits cross over, basically. You might have heard these terms, they might be new terms. And we were just supposed to invite a random spirit to come for this healing technique that we were learning, and my brother showed up. 23 years later, after his death, he showed up. And I was able to have my first and last conversation with him. We had a full conversation. He was sitting right in front of me. I could almost physically touch him. It was so tangible. It broke my heart open. He gave me messages from my mother, told her it wasn't her fault that he committed suicide, and I was able to help him transition to spirit. And what he said was that he had been stuck for 23 years, being able to fully perceive the human world, but not able to interact with it. And I was the first person that heard him and was able to interact with him. And this is a common experience for people that commit suicide because they're taking a life too soon. They're interrupting their divine plan. We do have free will, and it is possible, and the spirits can heal from those choices, but oftentimes they will get stuck in this in-between place. I just want to give you some examples of the spirit conversations that I've had so you have a little bit of context. And again, if you're watching, I would love to know, what is your relationship to spirit communication? Have you done it? Are you curious about it? Are you terrified? Just letting me know in the comments, interacting a little bit would be amazing. I have a lot of spirit stories. I've been doing this work for over a decade. I actually do exorcisms and spirit integration work for a living. And I will be offering some really cool discounted sessions and things in this realm. If you stay on and you're curious, you just need to watch this video. I'll speak a little more to those discounted sessions at the end. I'm not going to go terribly long, but also I have a lot of stories. So we'll just go with the flow. Replay will be available. And often when I'm looking for spirit, I'm looking off to the side, and I notice that I'm looking off to the side, I'm accessing memories and stories, and I'm also allowing the psychic information that wants to flow through to come in. Let's talk about how to recognize if a spirit is around you, how they might present. Many ways, many ways. A spirit, in order for a spirit to fully apparate, to fully appear, to where you see a form, clothing, a facial feature, they need to pull energy from their environment. And usually you're the most alive thing in the environment, which means if they're appearing to you, they're quite possibly sucking your life force energy in order to do so. A lot of people will see a spirit and experience exhaustion. A lot of people will depict walking through a cold energy. So most often a spirit is not going to pull your life force energy in order to apparate if they're there to help you. They might do that if their intent is to harm, or if they really need to be seen and heard. But most commonly, that's not how they're going to appear. It's very rare. And if they do that, it's only for a moment. You might see it for a second and then it disappears. Very rarely have I seen spirits in that way. However, if a spirit does come into a space and you're aware of it, you can ask it to give you an image, a psychic image of their appearance, how they want to present, maybe their name, things of that nature. They may appear through moving things in the house. That can be a little easier than apparating, is to knock a piece of paper off the fridge or rattle stuff around to try and get your attention. I was present at the funeral of a former partner's mother's passing, and Kathy was her name. Kathy was a hilarious spirit. She was not, I was in a polyamorous relationship, and both the other woman and I went to the funeral with our partner. And Kathy came up to me and said, I'm not happy that I don't approve of your relationship. I'm not happy that you're here. And I have nothing to say to that woman, to the other woman. Kathy hadn't been very nice to my other partner because she wasn't down with polyamory. She was very Catholic, and it was against her religion to some degree. So Kathy in her waking life was quite rigid and narcissistic and mean. And she was certainly presenting that way immediately after her funeral. She would say some really biting, snippy things to me. Anyway, Kathy floats away. I can feel her. Later, I'm in her house, and I get this wave of energy, a Kundalini experience, and it's very clear to me that I need to call my partner's former high school partner to deliver a message to her. So I spend an hour delivering this message to her. Spirit is just coming through me, and my other two partners are watching. And they had never seen me in this space before, and they were actually disbelieving before this moment of my abilities. So anyway, this happens, and Kathy comes in. At one point in time, I burst into tears, and I'm crying. My partner hasn't cried for the death of his mom, and I'm an empath, so I was crying for him in this moment. I was crying for him. Kathy sort of comes into my personal space, and she says, "What are you doing? Are you pulling a Kathy Flynn?" As in, you're being miserable for no reason, is kind of her intention with what she said. And I just burst out laughing. And then I watched as Kathy morphed into her spirit form, and she expanded from that rigidity into this beautiful rainbow essence and just soared through the room of her, or through her entire house, but through the room that we were in. And it was so beautiful to watch that transformation as her spirit form took over her human personality, and she expanded into more of spirit. It was beautiful. Anyways, Kathy stayed around for a year after she died. Her son was adopted, and this was his last parent. And she really wanted to check on him and make sure that he was okay. And Kathy would do really weird things. She would flicker the lights in the kitchen to get my attention. She would change the TV channel from one channel to another to get our attention. And my partner couldn't. He refused to see it. So I would tell him. She actually at one point gave me the name of his mother. And she would do weird things like putting her obituary or her funeral page. I had her photo and description, and she put it in my suitcase for a trip to Costa Rica as if she wanted to come. This was also when she told me his birth mother's name. And when he and I would fight, she would knock her obituary page off of my fridge with an insistent message to get along. And she was quite strong. She was always around. So this can happen. Sometimes the grandmothers, the mothers, the family members will stick around for a while after they die on purpose to check on the living. Sometimes they stick around because we no longer have our rites of passage for walking the spirits to the other side. We used to have these rites and rituals that we would do when people died. And the Mexican culture has Dia de los Muertos, where they're inviting the dead to walk among them. And we have Samhain, which is a similar thing where we can invite the dead to feast and come, because the dimensional energy between the worlds is thinner during this time. And it can be thinner to all sorts of things, not just our deceased ancestors. Anyway, long tangent. We can recognize spirits when they apparate, when they move things. You might see an orb floating or flash in your house. You might see a ripple in the air current around you. It can just ripple, and you're like, wait, what just happened? Did something go by? Chances are something went by. I was in the forest the other day. I'm living in North Carolina, and I've been wanting to see the Fae creatures. The Fae are this class of beings that we have dwarves and fairies and things of that nature coming from. And I know that they exist. I've seen them before. So I've been asking since I arrived here, because this is a Fae hotspot in the world, to see them, and I haven't until the other day. And these little fairy-esque flying beings came, and they would pick up these leaves and take them against the current into the sky, and they would dance with them. And it was really beautiful. And then I walked by what I consider a fairy mound, a portal into fairy, one of their home stations in the forest. And there was these little pointy-eared beings up there looking at me as I was looking at them. But they weren't fully in form. They were more of an energetic experience. They often say in the Druid way, in order to see Fae, you can soften your eyes, open your third eye, and look energetically at the world, and then you might catch something from that gaze. So, spirit, many ways to perceive them. A lot of times you might hear a ringing in your ears, and I have a client who loves to distinguish high-pitched ringing as a helpful being and a low-pitched ringing as something to be wary of, potential danger. And he does it this way, and I love that. I love that. And so you just get to find your way. When we're working with psychic powers, we each have something that we might be more naturally inclined to, and the rest of the things we can certainly develop. Somebody asked me recently, can you learn how to communicate with spirit if you don't have a natural ability? I believe you can develop all psychic senses, all of them, with practice. We just have to sit down and do the practice. You just have to sit down and invite spirit to come into connection if there's not one naturally there. So we're gonna practice that of just inviting a spirit to come. I want to talk about entities, possession, things of that nature as something to be mindful of. Again, if we're not seeing spirits, we're not aware of dark spirits either. But I would say that at 60% of people at any point in time might have some form of entity attachments. And when I say the word entity, I mean a wide range of possibilities. An entity at a basic level is a thought form. For instance, if you repeat "I'm stupid" over and over and over again in your life, it begins to turn into this thought form, this distortion energy outside of your field or attached to your field, which can then hook you into that thought form. And it can cause you to loop and loop and loop in that thought form, making itself stronger. It almost becomes conscious because of how much repetition there is. Same is true for gods. We can give gods more power through invoking them, talking to them, saying their names. And we can lose gods when we don't think about them, when we don't perceive them. So we can charge energy more. So at the very basic level, an entity is a thought form that we've created that begins to have an essence of its own and can cause a distortion in our energy body. We can also do this in a positive way, create helpful thought forms. It's not just in the negative light. Entities can be extraterrestrial beings that are trying to communicate. They can be demons, things of that, who are using and manipulating the body. A lot of entities can come when we have a distorted energy field. Maybe we're using drugs, or we have severe trauma, or we're just not tending to our energetic space and it's holy and fragmented. When we're holy and fragmented, these distorted beings can come in and use our vessel to feed, to take energy, to have an experience. A lot of beings who died of an addiction might latch onto a living ancestor or a living person struggling with addiction, and they feed off of the addiction through them. This can be sex addiction, this can be drug and alcohol addiction. Chances are, if you are struggling with addiction, you might be having difficulty with an entity attachment and just not be aware of it, especially if you can't get out, your thoughts are looping. Ways to notice an entity might be there is if you're having these really dark looping thoughts that are not your own, or you're stuck in a cycle and you can't get out. This can also be trauma, but trauma creates holes, which can create potential opening for the unhelpful beings. And at the very advanced level, we're going to have a full-blown demonic possession where somebody's inhabited by something else and it's talking through them, walking through them, and acting through them. This is often why we see in certain murders and rape situations where the human has no recollection of doing it, right? Because they didn't. This entity did as them. And we ignore this in mental illness a lot of the time because we can't see it. It's real, it's happening. I posted an article written by the Vatican, the Catholic Church, saying that the demand for exorcisms in the United States is too large for them to keep up with. They don't have enough trained deacons to cater to the demand for exorcisms. The Catholic Church is doing it. The Catholic Church, which is very rigid and non-believing in a lot of magical things, does exorcisms. It's real. People can become possessed. The possessed being can cause all sorts of atrocities, experience health diseases, things of this nature. And we can learn to work with these beings at a higher level to get them off of us, to get them off of someone else. And that's what I do. I work with spirit integration work and exorcism work, as well as I can channel messages and do all of that. But I'm really here for the cleanup of the earth and the healing, which means working with distorted spirits. Okay, recognizing that they're there. A very simple way to begin to communicate with them. Say you hear a ringing in your ears, or you see a flash of energy go by in your space, and you have the resource to try to connect with it, with whatever is there. All you need to do is slow way down. You can take some deep breaths, come into a meditative space, and at the beginning of your spirit communication practice, you're going to just try to receive yes or no answers. It can be as simple as, is someone there? And you wait to hear the yes or no. You can say, are you here to help me? Yes or no. Wait to hear the answer. The spirits can lie. They can totally lie. Also something to be aware of. But this is just a practice. Hopefully it's a good, helpful spirit that won't lie. You can say things like, are you here, or do you need my healing? Yes or no. And just begin to ask yes or no questions and practice receiving the answer. Once you can clearly receive yes or no on a consistent basis, you can then begin to work to longer sentence structures and receive whole messages from them. But until you have yes or no, you might not want to jump into full-blown channeling or psychic communication because you haven't flexed this muscle. So asking them yes or no questions. A lot of times the spirit energy is a lot higher frequency because it's not bound by the body. So it can come too fast and we don't get it because it's too fast. And if that's the case, you can simply ask the spirit to slow down to match your frequency so that you can receive whatever it is that they're trying to say. They will work with you. Again, if they're there to help you, they will work with you, especially if it's a guide or a higher being. And they're coming in a lot these days to those who are able to perceive them to help with this time on Earth. Telepathic communication. You get to develop your telepathy. You don't have to talk out loud, but you can. You can totally talk out loud and they can hear you. And you might hear them psychically in your head, in your ear. And you just have to dial in this subtle sensing. So yes or no questions, asking them to slow down. And from there, you can begin to build into, as I said, those strings of sentences. Yes or no is really important. So I would love for you to practice yes or no after this training and see what you get. And of course, maybe if you get yes or no clearly, you can then invite them to deliver a one-word message and practice receiving the one-word message. You want to be in a quiet space. You want to be in a still space. You want to be in a meditative space where you're not getting interrupted. You might want to have your third eye dialed open. You can spin it open. You can just visualize it opening, but this chakra is going to be the one that's going to help you receive the messages the most. So the third eye and the crown are how we connect to spirit. This is how we see and sense the subtle, and this is our connection to divine and spirit realms. And really you need these two chakras to be open so that that transmission can come down and through. And it can come just to here, and eventually you may be able to get it to where you can speak the transmission, you can write the transmission, and you become the transmission. You can fully receive spirit into your body if your whole system is open and calibrated to that. It's really fun to channel by receiving an entire being, a higher dimensional being into your body to communicate through you. This is an advanced technique called aspecting. Aspecting is a way to channel where, like I just said, repeat it again, you're inviting a being to use your vessel to experience life and have a conversation to receive information. And when you're aspecting, you choose a deity, you choose a being, you choose a source of information. I love to use Mary Magdalene as one of my examples. I aspect with her a lot because receiving her essence into my body is such a glorious experience, and I love it. It feels so good, and we know each other from previous lifetimes. So when you aspect, you're inviting the being to look out your eyes, to use your mouth to communicate, to come into you to whatever degree. You can invite them as deeply or as shallowly as you want. And then you can have a list of questions and you have somebody there with you who can ask your questions while this being is inside of you. Again, advanced level technique. We do it in Rainbow Warrior. If you want to go to the advanced level with spirit, absolutely look into joining Rainbow Warrior. We do the advanced work there. This is more beginner style. So I'm just telling you of what's possible. When so in order to speak to a spirit, they might automatically be there and you choose to tune in, or you can ask a certain being to come for you to practice with. There's a lot of spirits that are ready to help and they just need us to ask them. A lot of the angelic law is we're here, we're guarding you, but if you don't ask for help, we don't give it because of free will. So if you ask for help, you might receive it. And asking a spirit to drop in for a practice conversation session can be a really easy way to begin in forming that connection. I would say don't try and immediately connect to your deceased loved ones because there's more of a charge there, there's more of an attachment, and it might not come as easily than if you were inviting a random or a different sort of helper to come in for your session. Yes or no questions. Maybe you have 3 questions that are not yes or no that you can practice receiving the answers to. And what I would do is write a list of 3 questions that you want answers to, and 3 yes or no questions that you want answers to, and to begin to use these 6 questions over and over again as you practice, so that you can tune into the different answers for each of the questions with different beings. Great. And again, I'd love to know your success stories, if you've had success communicating with spirits, in the comments, what your relationship was or is like, and just share some of your spirit experiences if you've had them, or if you want them, share that you want them. I'd love to know where you're at. It's going to take a moment, see what wants to come through next. Right now on Earth, there's a lot of spirit static, a lot of spirit and psychic attack happening. There are entities that do not want the light to win. This is a very real spiritual battle that's happening. And again, some of these things become real if you believe in them. And if you don't believe in them, you're not going to have experiences with spirits because you don't believe. Your field is closed to that type of energy access. And it might not be for you, but if you're here, there's probably some curiosity. And if there's curiosity, you want to enter into this space open. Venus, my co-facilitator for Rainbow Warrior, she does not open herself to spirits. We do the advanced spirit work in Rainbow Warrior, but in her everyday life, she does not open. She does not want to have these experiences. It's not her soul's path. It's mine. And it might not be yours. And you can choose how you want to run your field. For example, when I first started communicating with spirits, I opened my gates and they were everywhere all the time. I was exhausted. I wasn't sleeping. Beings were constantly coming to me for help or to disturb me. Not all for help. And I was so tired. I was so tired and I was so overwhelmed. And I had to learn how to dial back my sensing so that I wasn't open to spirit all the time. I began to have office hours. You can come between 2 and 4 and I will have a conversation with you and help you with whatever you need help with. But I'm not available 24 hours of the day anymore. And I began to really cultivate when I was available and open, and to dial back my senses for when I was not. Because when I'm open and I say I'm walking down the Pearl Street in Boulder, Colorado, there's entities everywhere. Walk down Pearl Street, look at the people, see if you can see those entities. They're around, they're everywhere. When we have an addicted population, a homeless population, oftentimes the entities are in them or attached to them. And so that can be a really great way to practice seeing, walking down a city street, a populated city street. Because again, 30 to 60% of people have some type of attachment or distortion that's manifesting in their energy body. Sometimes you can see them as gargoyles or serpentine creatures, or sometimes they might look as though they were blobs of energy. There's many ways in which the entities might present. And if you have an entity and you need some help, you just hit me up. I can help you. I used to do exorcisms where I took the spirit off the person, and I would do something with the spirit when they were off the person, and I rarely do that anymore. Now I love to transform the entity, the distortion, back into a love essence. I prefer to alchemize it with the being who it's attached to, so that we can repair the tear, repair the hole, repair the problem, so that the person is no longer prone to entity attacks. They've filled in a part of themselves through integrating the spirit, that it no longer can harm them. Oftentimes, if you take a spirit off, but we don't repair the energy fields, spirits can come back over and over again to attach to that wound, to that distortion. I'm going to give an example by Barbara Brennan, which I really love. Barbara Brennan she's basically the one who wrote the textbooks for energy schools and for the Healing Touch program. And she tells this story in her 3rd book about how she went to a practice group with some other practitioners. They were learning a technique for using their 3rd eye as a portal to access other realms. She had just had a friend that she knew who committed suicide. Anyway, and she had just been thinking about him. She had spoken his name in the group, just wondering about him. And they do this technique, they open their third eye. And for the next week, she has a dark force following her. It's following her everywhere. She's sleeping with the lights on in her house. She's terrified. She's working with a shaman every day to try and get it away from her. And everybody can see this dark energy that has begun to follow her. And after a week, she decides to turn and have a conversation. This is the first time she thought to have a conversation with this entity following her. She turns to talk to it, realizes that it's this friend, this person she knew who had committed suicide, and that she was the one who actually invoked him through speaking his name, through inviting him into that healing space where they were going into deep practice. And that the reason why he was presenting as dark and ominous was because he was wounded. He committed suicide because he was in a lot of pain as a human, and that pain didn't leave because he was in a spirit. He just no longer had a body. But his spirit, his energy was still wounded. And she was able then to work with him in healing some of his spirit to help him transform more as a light body. And it was really awakening for her because she realized that we do invoke these things. They do need healing just like humans do. And most of the time, they're not really so dangerous and distorted that we can't find a way to love them. Love transforms all things. It really does. There's this frequency, this dimension of love that changes everything if we can access it. We sometimes fall out of access. So I love to do this work with spirit, where I'm a healer in the living world, but I also work with healing spirit because, yeah, if a spirit is trapped between the worlds, it's because they need healing. They did something that doesn't allow them to cross over fully, or they were abandoned and left in the world between, and they need help walking to the other side because they don't know how to get there. And helping spirits transition is really easy. There's many ways to do it. It's super simple. If a spirit is ready to go, you can open a rainbow bridge, you can open a portal, you can invite angels to come and get them, and you just simply walk them to the bridge. So it's a visualization, it's an energetic tool. Again, every spirit is different, and you're going to want to work with it differently. Just like every human is different, and you're going to want to work with it slightly differently based on the personality and the wounding that's present. Yeah, so I would love to know how this is landing for you, if you're watching, if there's any questions of things you want me to touch on specifically, type it in the comments. I am going to give you some tools to just tune into if you have any entity attachments right now, to work with them, to do a little bit of psychic and energetic protection. Basically, what I believe is that if your field is strong, if it's coherent, if it's healthy, you're not going to be prone to sticky energies attaching to you, or if they do attach to you, you're going to be able to transmute them really easily. But if you are under-resourced, you're stressed, you're sick, you are using substances habitually, you're going to be more susceptible to the darker energies. And this is why energetic hygiene can be really helpful for maintaining our vibrational state. Now, I will say there are entities who, when we're at a really high vibration, want to come and steal that life force energy. There have been many times when I've transitioned from one level of consciousness to another in this lifetime that I have been attacked. Let's see, one spirit inverted my third chakra. I kept hearing the message for months that I was on the verge of something. Spirit was saying, you're on the verge of something. And I didn't know what it was. But I kept hearing it. And then my third chakra got inverted. I was randomly vomiting everywhere. I'd have to pull over my car and vomit. I would be walking and vomit. And it was just so random and sporadic. And I wasn't sick. I was just throwing up. So finally I went to a multidimensional healer who said, a being pulled out your solar plexus chakra. Let's put it back. The old shamanic way to kill another shaman was to pull out that solar plexus center, to disconnect it or invert it, and then the shaman would die. And this used to be the way that we would fight spiritually big magicians. And another time, oh, and soon after that, I was able to receive a healing technique that I call theta reconnection therapy. And it was a really profound technique for turning on the whole energetic grid system, clearing out karma, trauma, other lifetimes, and reconnecting the torus field in its pure light essence. It was a really powerful technique, is a really powerful technique. And this being did not want me to access it. Another time, as I had my first Christ consciousness experience, or my second one, and a spirit came into the back of my heart, turned the wheel of my hand while I was driving into the side of the mountain. It wanted to kill me. So it turned. At the last moment, I was able to correct and not hit the rock wall. And I will say also another story to go with the previous one I told. When I finally accepted my spirit gifts that day on Christmas Eve, and I helped these two beings transition, I got in my car to drive off the mountain, and I ended up hitting a patch of ice and sliding into someone else. So I got into an accident this day. I believe in exit points. We schedule in exit points into our life. If we're not doing our soul's work or living our purpose, we have these opportunities to leave planet Earth. And anyway, I run into this woman, and her name happens to be Mrs. Guard. If I hadn't have hit Mrs. Guard this day, I would have slid off the edge of the road into a riverbed and gone down many feet, and I probably would have died. But because I had said, okay, this is my day, I will accept these abilities, that exit point rerouted, and I lived, and we were both fine. The cars were not fine, but we were fine. So things like this can occur on our spirit journey. We weave them into our our stories. Another time, I was working with somebody who had Lyme's disease, and this whole story of this life that he had lived in the Amazon. He was an Amazonian medicine man. He made healing potions as well as poisonous potions, and he had a brother who had probably what we would describe as Down syndrome in this time frame. He was a little bit slow of mind. He was slightly disfigured in his physicalities, and but his brother, they were best friends. However, the younger brother who had this disability was really envious of the older brother and decided to take the older brother's poison and poison him and killed him. And that poison was manifesting as Lyme disease in this lifetime. And I could see it. It was just everywhere. And when I was clearing his energy field, the younger brother, who had now distorted his spirit by killing his family member, he was a distorted spirit, tried to strangle me. He choked me in the middle of the session. So I'm doing this healing technique. I'm getting choked by this spirit. And just fascinated by my life and how it was working. Anyway, I was able to get the spirit off and out of the room and continue and complete the healing session. I was doing theta reconnection, actually, on this man. Now, I'm going to just tune in to see if there's any questions. I love this one. I usually only see orbs in a waking state. In dreams, I usually see their true form. Anyway, one of these light orbs melded with me and then began speaking to me through my phone, and text messages. It left me feeling that they were telling me that they were going to use my phone like an oracle. I'm just curious what your perception is. Yes, they can do this. They can do this. The spirits that are here to help us or really have a strong message to deliver will try any way. They're going to change the clock. They might change the music so that a song comes on that has a message within it. They may say, see a sign, and you look up to see the perfect sign that answers your question on the road. And I have seen and experienced spirits using technology to communicate. I I was invited to do a house clearing many years ago for a woman whose fiance had just died of an overdose. He was huffing, and he suffocated himself with a balloon or a bag when he was using nitrous, I think is the accurate way to say it. I'm not familiar with nitrous so much. Anyway, he had died in their apartment, and she had begun sleeping in the other room because he was doing things to try and get her attention. For instance, his cell phone that he used when he was alive was dead, completely dead of any battery on the bedside table, and he would call it from his own number. It would ring with his name on the phone, on the dead phone. And he would do other things. She was sleeping with a guy friend who was there just for emotional support. They were not having sex. And her dead beloved would try and suffocate this man with the pillow, or he'd yank the pillows out from under him, like, get away from my woman. Anyway, they absolutely can use the technology. That is one easy way for them to manipulate, because again, spirit is frequency and can just change vibrational currents. So that's a great way to pay attention for messages and signs these days. I love that. Many ways. If they have a message, they're going to try and communicate in whatever way possible, and we can be really dense and singularly focused, or open and receptive to receiving the information. All right, let's go into the psychic protection entity check. And then we'll close this session for today. So closing your eyes wherever you're at, coming into that meditative space through your breath, slowing down your breath. And now I want you to bring your awareness to your auric field. For the point of this practice, you're either going to push it out or pull it into 2 feet around your body in all directions. So if you're really big, you want to notice that. Pull it in. If you're really tightly woven, pushing out the edges. 2 feet, front, back, side, side, top, bottom, all around you. And once it's there, I want you to begin to use your third eye awareness, your psychic awareness, to scan your energy fields. So as you scan, you're sensing and looking for distortions, for foreign objects, for tears, weak spots, things of that nature. So as your field is 2 feet around you, psychically looking at it, do I have any distortions in my auric field that I need to pay attention to? Ideally, your auric field is smooth, it's round, it's vibrating with light, it's full, and potentially colorful if you can see colors. So, yeah, here you're noticing, is it circular? Do I have a hole anywhere? Or is there something attached to me right now? Oftentimes you might perceive an attachment. So say one side of your field is really circular and smooth, but then you get to this spot that has something in it that's not smooth and round. Just noticing. And if you have something in your field, whether it's a small blemish or a big one, I want you to bring your awareness to that spot that's distorted. And if there's something in you or attached to you, I can sense something in the field. Someone has something on their right shoulder. Kind of, yeah, a density on the right shoulder. You want to see if you are able to psychically move it off of you. So you can push the thing off. And as you're pushing it off, you can visualize a flame burning in your hand. So pushing it off and just burning it up with this flame in your palm so that it's not going into the ethers, but it's getting transmuted and burned right here. And if you can't push it off, sometimes they're really sticky, they don't want to go. They maybe, if there's an entity, it's going to travel, it has legs and it moves type of thing. If you can't get it off through that method, I want you to take a moment, and we can all do this together. Take a moment and cultivate love. So I want you to access the love frequency, how you know it to be, how you perceive it in your body. Pure, pure love. Unconditional, pure God love. And I just want you to bring that into your energetic space. And then rather than trying to push the distortion off, I want you to see if you can invite it more deeply into your hearts as you vibrate this frequency of love and as we vibrate it together here with you. So if it doesn't push off, can you bring it into your hearts, holding the frequency of love? And does it begin to change? Just noticing. You might need extra help. It might not be moving, and that's fine too. I can totally help you with that later. But if you can vibrate it with love and invite it deeper into you, does it alchemize? Or does some of it alchemize? Again, we are simply noticing here and being in the practice. Yeah, and it may take longer or less time. Sometimes they move really easily. Sometimes they're more difficult, depending on how complex the entity or the distortion is. But that is a simple way to begin to notice, feel. I'm curious if anybody felt anything that wasn't supposed to be there, how it presented, how you noticed it, what it looked like, things of that nature. If it moved through one of these methods or not, I would love to know that, because again, if it didn't, I will reach out and I can offer some additional support. And if it didn't, it's fine. You know, there can be many reasons. You're not resourced enough to move it on your own because of your trauma, because of your wounding, because it's really advanced. They can be really advanced. These things can have minds of their own. Again, they have legs, they can move, they can manipulate energies, they can be really interwoven with our physical body, depending on the complexity. So I would just love to know what you noticed and experienced, and we're going to do a psychic protection technique now. So you can stand up for this. It's going to be the easiest way, or you can sit down and we can visualize this. So what we're going to do is, as if our arms were the cross of a star, we're going to visualize a 5-pointed star. So our legs would be one of the points. The top of our head is the top point. The arms go out to the side. And I want you to visualize that 5-pointed star coming into your auric field. And I want you to visualize this 5-pointed star lighting up with an iron frequency. So this silver metal frequency as you become the star, the iron pentacle. And around the star and around your energy field, I want you to visualize a circle, an iron circle forming. And just hold the visualization of this iron pentacle circle of protection within your energy body for some moments more. And noticing how you feel within this iron pentacle. This is a sigil for protection. A sigil is a symbol that has magic or energy imbued in it for a specific purpose, and this one is protection. Again, I'm a little bit pagan, so sometimes I teach pagan things, but they're really energy things. Beautiful. And this is your last chance to ask any questions if you have them. Tell me how things are going, what you liked, what you learned. If you need any extra spirit support, I would love to know. You can also reach out to me personally, and I will share a couple of special offers that I have. First of all, if you need an exorcism or spirit integration session, I have them. Always. I always have them, whether it's now or later down the line, always an option to do spirit integration work with me. I just want to put that out there. I'm offering a little discounted bonus for other lifetime readings. So I will do an other lifetime reading for you for $111. Normally it's $150. And I'll be offering that special to anybody who hopped on this video. So if you want to see another lifetime, if you have questions that you need answered, we can explore the Akashic records. I do this typically from a distance where I do the recording. I send you a recording, and you can send me any questions that you want me to ask this other lifetime. So for instance, this can be really good if you're having a karmic experience, again, one of those looping experiences, things are happening that this life can't really explain. We can then go explore another lifetime that's influencing this one and get those questions answered. We can also do that together, but I usually sit with my eyes closed in meditation and speak the other lifetime and record it. And that's the easiest way. So those are $111 just for now, for the next 48 hours, we'll say. And the third invitation for you is Rainbow Warrior. If you're wanting to take your spirit skills to the advanced level, if you're wanting to learn deeper energy magic, ritual, healing modalities, if you're wanting to really develop your spiritual business to that six-figure level as a spiritual entrepreneur, as a healer, these are the types of people that I like to work with. And you're really wanting to grow your skillfulness as a leader and a healer through modalities and experiential spirit learning, as we'll call it. We will learn exorcisms, we will learn aspecting, we will learn psychic development, we will learn tantra, we will learn other lifetime explorations, astral travel. All of these things are included in Rainbow Warrior. Our next round is starting in February. So I will drop the link to that here in the comments. There's also, if you scroll to the top of the Rainbow Warrior page, you can see all the information and photos there. And I would love, we have a couple more spots open for this next round in February. I would love to see you there. You can always inquire for more information, check it out, let me know, fill out an application. All of that is pretty easy and self-explanatory. And Rainbow Warrior is just a lot of fun. It is a high-level shamanic facilitator program where you're getting to go deeper into some of these esoteric practices, magical experiences, ritualistic container creations. We also teach plant medicine facilitation. And again, we are really deeply working with some of these spirit aspects at an advanced level. You don't have to be advanced going into it. You will be more advanced coming out of it. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Again, I would love your feedback in the comments. How was it? What are you noticing? Do you have any questions? And I will be sure to reach out to you. Online classes. I guess I would love to know more, Travis. I can do online classes. I do a lot of free mini classes here in Rainbow Warrior. I can do online training in spirit work. It can be more amplified in person or in group dynamics, but I can teach you through a format online. So I do also custom containers. If maybe you're not ready for Rainbow Warrior, but you want to develop your spirit sensing, we can absolutely create something and weave something in that guise of things. Beautiful. Beloveds, thank you so much again for tuning in. I would love for you to comment, to interact, to reach out to me with any questions if you want to work together. I'm super available. I'm having a lot of fun after Samhain with all of this spirit communication spirit speak. So a lot of love. I'll see you soon. Go practice your spirit communication.